record also.
I don't know if you're recording. I'm recording.
Yeah, I'm recording too. I'm recording too.
Okay, so that makes two of us.
Okay.
We're the recording duo.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to say thank you again, Professor Vaknin, for your time. I
Thank you for
really
having
do
me, and
appreciate.
please call me Sam throughout this conversation. Sam.
Thank you. Thank you. Very kind. I really do appreciate you agreed to do this interview. I would also like to apologize from the beginning because I'm not very fluent in English, as you said before, but I will try my best.
Your English is far better than my Spanish.
Well, thank you. And well, this video will be uploaded in both channels, in yours and in mine.
Indeed.
So for all of you who follow me, this interview will be in English, but I will put subtitles down below. And well, again, it's such an honor to have you with us, Professor
Thank you for having
Sam
me.
Vaknin. I have heard some of your interviews, and I think you have very powerful thoughts.
Thank you.
And first of all, I'm going to do a short introduction for the people who follow me that maybe don't know you. I think that's...
There are many people who don't know me.
Yeah, I was thinking the same, but just in case. Professor Vaknin is a former psychology professor. He also has a PhD in physics. He has written many books, one of them called Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. He has been diagnosed twice with MBD, and he has a very successful YouTube channel where he explains many theories and research about narcissism in general. So, Professor Vaknin, my first question is, what is narcissistic abuse? Can you describe it?
Yes. Narcissistic abuse is a phrase that I coined in the late 80s. And I felt the need to come up with a new phrase because there have been abuse has preceded the 1980s. People have been abused since the dawn of humanity. And I felt the need to coin a new phrase to describe this particular type of abuse because narcissistic abuse is unlike any other type of abuse. All other types of abuse, and there are many, all other types of abuse are goal-oriented. Financial abuse is intended to obtain money. Legal abuse is intended to obtain a favorable verdict in a court. Verbal abuse is intended to humiliate and shame and demean someone, degrade someone. Physical abuse is intended to express uncontrolled anger, maybe to cause physical damage. Sexual abuse is intended to gratify certain needs, including sexual need, but not only. For example, the need for power. But all these types of abuse have to do with a specific goal. The goal could be a psychological goal, could be an objective goal like money or fame or access or power, but it's always about a goal. Narcissistic abuse is not about the target of the abuse. Narcissistic abuse has to do with the narcissist, not with the target of the abuse. Narcissistic abuse is the narcissist's way to gain control over a specific target, could be an intimate partner, could be a friend, could be a colleague or worker, and so on, to gain control in order to convert the target into a source of narcissistic supply within a shared fantasy. So it's about fulfilling the narcissist's needs where the target is incidental. The target is not chosen. The target is not special. The target is not unique in any way. The target doesn't fulfill a job description. The target just happens to be there in the vast majority of cases, simply happens to be there. Narcissistic abuse is an attempt to eliminate the target psychologically, to take away the target's independence or personal autonomy, agency, ability to act, self-efficacy, friends, family, social network, to take away everything from the target and to render the target totally dependent upon the narcissist and available to participate with the narcissist in a cult, kind of cult, a cult based on fantasy, and that is known in psychology as the shared fantasy. So it's unique. It's unique in the sense that the aim is not to take something from the target, but to eliminate, to negate, to destroy the target, to vitiate the target completely. It is therefore the equivalent of a nuclear war, a total war, compared to conventional war or compared to act of terrorism. Narcissistic abuse is the nuclear version of abuse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, very well described. I completely agree with you, and you put the words perfectly in that definition. From your point of view, a narcissist can suffer from narcissistic abuse.
Can narcissists suffer from narcissistic abuse? I didn't
Suffer
quite
from
understand.
narcissistic abuse.
Can narcissists be abused
Yeah,
narcissistically?
abused. Yeah, a victim as well.
Narcissists start off as a victim. The etiology of narcissism has to do with early childhood abuse and trauma. Now, there is no proof. There are no serious studies that show that narcissism has a genetic component like borderline. There are no studies that show that narcissists have brain abnormalities like the psychopath. So it seems that the main etiology of narcissism is childhood abuse and trauma. Now, there are many forms of abuse and trauma. You can abuse the child physically, you can abuse the child sexually and verbally and psychologically. These are the classical forms of abuse. But if you spoil the child, if you pamper the child, if you instrumentalize the child, if you use the child as an instrument to realize your own dreams and wishes, if you parentify the child, if you force the child to act as your own parent, all these are forms of abuse. When you spoil the child, you isolate the child from reality and from peers. You don't allow the child to get feedback. Reality is the main engine of growth. Reality is what drives us forward in a path of self-development. If you isolate the child, if you don't allow the child to suffer the consequences of his or her actions, if you don't allow the child to interact with peers because you're overprotective, if you keep telling the child that he's the greatest and can do no wrong and he never makes mistakes and so on, you're preventing the child from growing up, and you're not allowing the child to separate from you as a parent and to become an individual, a process known as separation individuation. So abuse is any situation where the parent prevents the child from becoming a separate individual, and the parent penetrates, breaches the boundaries of the child in any possible way, physical, psychological, denying the child agency and autonomy and independence, isolating the child, instrumental. In all these ways, the child is not allowed to form or to defend boundaries. So there are numerous ways to abuse, and narcissists have been almost all narcissists have been abused as children. So they start off as victims. They start off as victims.
Mm-hmm.
Only then they make a choice. They say, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I'm going to be the victimizer. I'm not going to be abused. I'm going to be the abuser. And because these are children, when they make these decisions, they're children, usually between the ages of 18 months and 36 months. So these children regard mother and father as godlike. These are godlike figures. They are infallible. They make no mistakes. They're all powerful. They're all knowing. So when the child says, I'm going to become my abuser, the child is actually saying, I'm going to become as godlike as my mother. I'm going to become as all powerful as my father,
Powerful.
as omnipotent, as omniscient. So the child creates a false self. The false self is everything the child is not. The child is powerless and helpless. The false self is all powerful. The child cannot predict the behavior of the adults around the child because they are in their own way disturbed. They're problematic. But the false self knows everything, is all knowing, omniscient. So false self can predict the behavior of adults. The child is less than perfect. The messages, the signaling from the child's parental figures, mainly the mother at the beginning, the signaling is you're a bad object, you're unworthy, you're imperfect, you're a failure, you don't perform as I expect you to, you're unlovable, you don't deserve to be loved. These are the messages. And the false self is exactly the opposite. The false self is you're perfect, you're godlike, you're brilliant, you never make mistakes, and so on and so forth. So the false self is what we call a compensatory mechanism. It's intended to compensate for the child's real circumstances and experiences. And here we have a strange situation. The narcissist starts off as a victim and then chooses to become an abuser. But because the narcissist starts off as a victim, he has intimate knowledge of the psychology of the victim. So the
Because he
narcissist,
has been through it. Sorry.
yeah, he has been there, he's done that. So the narcissist has the capacity to infiltrate the defenses of the victim and to convert her into his shared fantasy because the narcissist has been a victim. He knows all the vulnerabilities and the soft spots and the hot buttons of the victim because he used to be a victim. And then he is able to victimize his targets much more efficiently than typical abusers. Now, the vast majority of abusers are not narcissists. They don't even suffer any mental health problem. The vast majority of abusers are not diagnosed with any mental health issue. They are just power hungry. They're, they play with power,
Yeah.
they're power players and so on. But a small percentage has personality disorders or other types of mental health issues, mood disorders, and so on. And the narcissist is uniquely qualified by virtue of having been a narcissist, a victim. So this is the power of the narcissist. He resonates with the victim. There is resonance. And we call it trauma bonding because the victim is very self-destructive in the majority of cases. And the narcissist resonates with this self-destruction in a way that creates bonding. Trauma bonding is a form of self-harm. It's like cutting in borderline. It's a form of self-harm. And the narcissist comes to the victim and says, I'm going to be your mother. I'm going to love you as a mother does. I'm going to idealize you the same way a mother idealizes her baby. All I need you to do is to give up on your autonomy, to let go of your independence, to give in to me, to allow me to be your mother with all the authority and the power that a mother has. So the narcissist regresses his victim, infantilizes the victim, causes her to become an infant again, and offers her motherhood by idealizing her and by loving her apparently unconditionally at the beginning of the relationship during the love bombing phase. But at the same time, the narcissist insists that the victim should act as his mother. He wants the victim to become a maternal figure because he has unresolved conflicts with his original mother and he wants to resolve them through the relationship with his victim. So it's extremely complicated. It's not as simple as the narcissist is a bad guy, the victim is a good guy.
Yeah.
And, it's much more complex than this. Much more complex.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that that explanation is much more deeper than that we used to find online or many self-help books that we find nowadays in the market. So I appreciate your opinion on that subject. Um, my third question is, in your opinion, what are the biggest misconceptions of narcissism nowadays? Like
I don't
the
know.
things
I
that we
don't know
don't
where.
still get it.
I don't know where to start because I would say that about 90% of the so-called information online is misinformation. I simply don't know where to start. Let's take two issues, gaslighting and future faking. Gaslighting is a situation where you are made, someone coerces you or forces you to distrust your own perception of reality. So you begin to doubt. Ask yourself whether you're crazy. You begin to ask yourself, am I crazy? Am I misperceiving what's happening? Did I really get it wrong? Is this memory false? You begin to doubt yourself. Now, everyone online, all these self-styled experts, they say that narcissists gaslight. Narcissists don't gaslight. In order to gaslight, you need to be able to tell the difference between reality and fantasy. And gaslighting is premeditated. It's intentional. It's a control and manipulation strategy. It's Machiavellian. Narcissists believe their own lies. They believe their own confabulations. Narcissism is a fantasy defense. They cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality. When the narcissist tells you, you are amazing, you're hyper intelligent, you're drop dead gorgeous, I've never had anyone like you, and I'm going to marry you and have 3 kids with you, and we're going to live happily ever after, it's not because he's manipulating. It's because he believes this. He's not future faking. He believes his own intentions and promises, however fantastic they may be, and counterfactual. Because narcissists have what we call impaired reality testing. They're unable to perceive reality correctly. That's why narcissists are grandiose, because they don't perceive reality correctly. They think they're the greatest, the most amazing, geniuses, brilliant, drop dead gorgeous, whatever, because they don't perceive reality correctly. If you don't perceive reality correctly, you cannot gaslight. Because to gaslight means you know what is reality and you make other people doubt it. And psychopaths gaslight, not narcissists. That's point number one. And by the way, just to refer to the clinical literature, in clinical literature, gaslighting requires an asymmetry of power. So you cannot gaslight if you're equal. You can gaslight only if you have some advantage of some kind. You're a therapist, you're a teacher, you're a boss, you're a famous figure, a celebrity. Then you can gaslight. In clinical literature, not online. There's a lot of nonsense online. So I gave you 2 examples of future faking. Narcissists never future fake. They believe their own nonsense, their own promises. And gaslighting, which narcissists never do because they themselves don't know what is reality. So, and if you go online, you get the exact opposite information. Another very common piece of nonsense, is that narcissists are not self-aware. Narcissists are actually very self-aware. They are perfectly aware of their actions. They are absolutely aware of some of the impacts that their actions have. The narcissists are not self-aware, are not aware of their own motivations and psychodynamics. But who is? Very few people are.
Who is, or exactly, yeah.
Very few people are. So I would say, yes, if you talk to a narcissist, they're going to tell you, I'm a very tough guy. I insult people because I speak my mind. What they do, they glorify, they glamorize their misbehavior. They misbehave and they say, yes, I'm misbehaving, but it's not misbehavior. It's the way everyone should behave. I'm the only one who's behaving properly. For example, I am brutally honest. I'm hurting people. My honesty is hurting people, but that's the way everyone should be. Everyone should be brutally honest. Even if it hurts people, it's okay. And so they justify their own misbehavior, but they're fully aware. It's not true that they're not. So I gave you 3 examples, but I can give you another 20. I mean, it's a serious problem, the misinformation online. Very serious.
Yeah. I like that you said about explain the thing about awareness in narcissism, because that was another question I wanted to ask you, and you answered perfectly. I was when I kind of prepared the interview, I don't know. I thought maybe he's aware, just as you said, he's aware, he or she is aware of their behavior, but who is aware, properly aware of the motivations are behind that. And
Yeah.
so
It's
you
common
answered.
to not be aware. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Another problem is that victims, many victims, um, defend against the pain and against the hurt, because victims perceive what has happened to them as a kind of accident.
Yeah.
So they reject personal responsibility. They say, it's not my fault. I've done nothing to deserve this. I did not contribute anything to this. None of my actions should have led to this. Whatever has happened is because I was targeted. I became a
Mhm.
target. And so the first problem that happens with victims is that they perpetuate their victimhood. Their victimhood becomes an identity.
Mhm.
They become professional victims. It's an identity. Because when you're
Mhm.
a victim, you're entitled to special treatment. You get
Mhm.
attention. You can even make
Mhm.
money, and many of them do make money. That's point number one, problem number one, that you spend the rest of your life perpetuating your victimhood, because victimhood in today's world, victimhood pays. We have
Mhm.
victimhood movements, Victimhood is organizing principle of modern life.
Mhm.
The second problem is victims tell themselves that they're special, that they're unique, that they've been chosen. So there is this idiotic movement of so-called empaths, when actually there's no
Mhm.
such clinical entity, of course. So they self-aggrandize. They say, the narcissist chose me because my empathy is amazing and super, super sensitive. Or he chose me because I'm a kind person and very, very helpful. Or he chose me because of my love. He felt that my love can fix him or heal him, and so on and so forth. These claims have nothing to do with reality. The narcissist chooses his partners, and this could be a friend, could be an intimate partner, could be, the narcissist chooses people not because of who they are, not because of who they are, but because of what they can give him.
Mhm.
Narcissists are looking for basically four things, and I call them the four S's. Sex, supply, could be narcissistic supply, could be sadistic supply. Safety, because narcissists have abandonment anxiety, like borderlines, separation insecurity. So safety. And services, all kinds of services. So if you give the narcissist two out of these four, you qualify to be a partner. If you give the narcissist sex and services, you can be a partner. If you give the narcissist supply and sex, you can be a partner. If you give the narcissist safety and services, you can be a partner. And who you are is not relevant, because
Mhm.
narcissists, for example, cannot identify empathy in other people. They have never experienced empathy. So they don't
Mhm.
know. Even if you're empathic, they wouldn't realize this. And if you are nice and kind, they perceive it as a weakness.
Yeah.
They perceive this as a
Mm.
weakness. They would hold you in contempt. It will not
Mhm.
attract them to you. On the very contrary, it will push them away because you're contemptible. And if
Mhm.
you are helpful and useful, the narcissist sometimes would be aggressive. Because if you offer the narcissist advice, it means that you think the narcissist is stupid. And if you offer the narcissist help, it means that you think that the narcissist is not godlike, is not all powerful. He needs help. So
Mhm.
sometimes offering advice and help is met with aggression. The narcissist reacts to this aggressively. The victims are deluding themselves into thinking that the narcissist has chosen them because of some traits, some personality parameters, none of this. They
Mhm.
happened to be there, and they were willing and able to provide the four S's, or at least two of the four S's. They were
Mhm.
willing to provide sex, the narcissist took it. They're willing to serve the narcissist allowed them. They were willing to
Mhm.
supply the narcissist, of course, the narcissist encouraged this. And all of this was done within a fantasy of
Mhm.
love, a fantasy of a relationship. And the victims, most victims, cannot let go of this fantasy. They're grieving the fantasy. They're grieving the fantasy. They are grieving themselves in the fantasy because the narcissist idealizes the victim. And then the victim sees herself through the narcissist's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
She sees her idealized self through the narcissist's gaze, and she falls in love with herself. It is self-infatuation. The narcissist allows the victim to interact with her idealized version, with
Mm-hmm.
her image of herself in his eyes, and she finds this addictive. She is, she cannot let go of this. There are many addictive elements in the shared fantasy, and this creates, of course, bonding. And it's very difficult for the victims to let go and to make sense of what happened. They need to tell themselves that they're special. It's a narcissistic defense, ironically. The
Yeah.
victims, the victims become grandiose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in that point, maybe what is narcissistic abuse can create more narcissists. Maybe not in the adult age, because obviously we don't switch, we don't create personality disorders at 30 years old, for example, but it creates some kind of narcissism in their victims. Is that correct?
It creates narcissistic defenses. It doesn't create, it triggers
So
narcissistic
defenses,
defenses.
yeah, defenses, yeah, yeah.
And
Mhm.
it induces narcissistic behaviors. And this is what Len Sperry called narcissistic style. So narcissism is infectious. You're right. Personality disorders cannot emerge after a certain age. There's a debate, what's the age? Because, for
Yeah,
example, Twenge and Campbell and other scholars, they say that up to 25 can happen up to 25. Others say 18, even the great Kernberg,
yeah.
18. But
Mhm.
whatever the case may be, definitely when you're 40, you cannot acquire narcissistic personality disorder. This is
Yeah,
not COVID-19. Yeah?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but what could happen is that you could adopt a style, the style of the narcissist. You could become a lot less empathic. And we know, for example, that traumatized people are less empathic.
yeah.
And today we know that borderlines are less empathic than we thought. So this has been amended in the text revision of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, edition 5, that
Mhm.
borderlines are less empathic than we thought because they're traumatized. So
Mhm.
trauma yields disempathy, reduces empathy. So you'll be less
Mhm.
empathic. You'll be a lot more aggressive. You will be a lot more defensive. You will be probably abusive reactively. You will be likely to be abusive. You are likely to be grandiose. Try in an attempt to make sense of what has happened to you. You are likely to somehow create a narrative which renders you somehow special. So there are there's grandiosity and so on. Luckily, all these are transient phenomena. The unfortunate thing is, if you're exposed to the online environment, to YouTube and so on and so forth, all these behaviors and traits and your own victimhood take much longer to resolve than had you not been exposed. People think that if they go online and they talk to other people who have had the same
Mhm.
experiences, that is a healing process. Actually, studies show that it is exactly the opposite. It perpetuates the trauma. Today, we
Mhm.
know, for example, that the worst thing you can do after trauma is to discuss the trauma with the victim, to debrief, to debrief the victim. It's the worst thing you can do. We have studies that show that venting, complaining constantly about what has happened to you, doesn't allow you to heal. So exposure to online environment actually prolongs the trauma and perpetuates the abuse. There is no positive aspect in anything, not one positive aspect in anything that's happening online. So today, millions of victims suffer unnecessarily what should have lasted 1 year of grief, three
Mhm.
years of trauma, now can take 20 years. I know people who are 20 and 30 years online, stuck, absolutely stuck in the phase of
Mhm.
the breakup.
Well, that's very interesting because do you think SPT PTSD? How do you say PTSD?
CPTSD.
Complex. It can be related with that, and the how do you say be online and consuming all this content about narcissism can even get worse. The CPTSD can even get worse.
It's a form of re-traumatization. You're
uh,
re-traumatized. We used to think that if someone had a trauma, the first thing you need to do is talk to them about the trauma, discuss the trauma, allow them to relive the trauma, to re-experience the trauma in a safe environment. The environment,
mhm,
the clinical setting, the therapy, But today, absolutely, we know, and these are the new guidelines, that the worst thing you can do is discuss the trauma. You should absolutely not discuss the trauma. Initially, of course. Much later, years later, you should discuss the trauma, but not immediately. And what
mhm,
is happening online is exactly this. It's a form of debriefing. There is something called trauma dumping. Trauma dumping is when many traumatized people come together and they
mhm,
share their traumatic experiences.
mhm,
That's not helpful. It
mhm,
appears to be helpful because it tends to validate your experiences.
mhm,
You say, I'm not alone and I'm not crazy. I'm not alone and I'm not crazy. So you think you're misled. You think, oh, that's part of healing. Realizing that I'm not alone and I'm not crazy is part of healing. No, it's not actually. This is not the point of healing. This has to do with something else known as reframing. So this is a
mhm,
CBT technique and so on. Never mind. It's reframing. It's not healing. To heal, uh, to heal from narcissistic abuse, the focus should be on yourself and on the voices, the introjects, the voices that the narcissist implanted in your mind. What the narcissist does to you, using a technique known as entraining, the narcissist exposes you essentially to brainwashing. Essentially. Now,
mhm,
none of this is intentional, unlike the psychopath. It's just what the narcissist does. The same way
mhm,
a tiger devours an antelope. So the tiger doesn't sit and say, let me look at Wikipedia if I should devour antelopes. No, he just devours antelopes.
mhm,
A virus penetrates the cell, replicates itself, and infects other people because it's a virus, not because the virus read a textbook or consulted with Anthony Fauci. It's a virus.
yeah,
It's the same with the narcissist. Narcissist does whatever it does reflexively, instinctually. It's nothing to do with premeditation or planning. That's a psychopath.
mhm,
So the narcissist entrains you, he brainwashes you. And in clinical terms, what the narcissist does, he generates, because he regresses you to infancy, he brings you back to infancy, he is able to replicate a process in an infancy known as introjection. Introjection, internalization, identification, incorporation. It's a four-stage process. The narcissist replicates this and he introjects himself into your mind and he leaves a trace, he leaves a voice inside your mind.
mhm,
Even when the narcissist is gone physically, no longer there, his voice is active here. And his voice in your mind colludes and collaborates with similar voices in your mind. So if you had a mother who kept telling you that you're a failure and a loser and ugly and stupid and so on, the voice of the narcissist will find out the voice of your mother and will collaborate with it, will amplify it, will enhance it, will create a coalition, a constellation of interest, a construct inside your mind. To heal from narcissistic abuse, you need to focus on this. You need to eliminate the narcissist from your physical environment, and then you need to eliminate the narcissist in your mind. And if you're exposed to other people, they actually amplify the voice of the narcissist in your mind because they themselves keep raising the topic of the narcissist. They keep discussing the narcissist. They demonize the narcissist. They mythologize the narcissist. They make the narcissist sound as some semi-god or all-powerful entity, dark entity that is, and sometimes they say this. They say it's a demon or
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
devil,
yeah,
This is not healthy environment. Absolutely not healthy environment, unfortunately. Not healthy.
yeah.
And very unscrupulous and immoral con artists and charlatans, many of them with academic degrees, use this environment to make a lot of money and perpetuate the victimhood on purpose. You could see how they make sure that you continue to be a victim, never recover. I can see that because I know what they're doing. These are people with degrees. There are many others who are just, ex-victims and they want to make some money or they want to be famous. So there are
Yeah.
many. None of these people is holy. None of them is truly healing. None of them. I mean, it's a really bad sin out there. I'm talking about the English speaking. I don't know. I have no access to other I know other languages, but I don't. I watch only English speaking videos.
Well, yeah, in Spanish, I think it's the same, almost the same. So, yeah. Well, I talk about narcissism, but I don't consider myself I'm a con artist or you know, I'm um making fraud or something. I try to reflectionate and talk about it, but not to keep people in victimhood. But anyway, that's another debate, and that's very interesting as well. Um, well, well, from your point of view, uh, what is the common trait that has every type of narcissist? If you had to choose one, what will it be?
I'm not going to give you the common answer. The common answer and an accurate answer is that all types of narcissists, and there are quite a few types, subtypes, all types of narcissists have cold empathy. What the phrase that I coined is cold empathy. It's cognitive empathy plus reflexive empathy without emotional empathy. So they are able to read other people, they're able to understand other people, they're able to spot weak points, vulnerabilities, and so on and so forth, but they don't react emotionally to this. So a narcissist would see you cry, and the narcissist would say, cognitively would say, this person is crying, that means that this person is sad. There's like a table, big table. This person is crying means he's sad. But then the narcissist would not feel sad for you. The narcissist would say, maybe because right now this person is sad and broken and vulnerable, maybe I can use this somehow. Maybe I could make this person my source of supply or partner in a shared fantasy. And the psychopath would look at you and say, this person is crying, this person is sad, and I can have sex with her because now her defenses are down. I can have sex with her. So now a psychopath is goal oriented. But that would not be my answer, although it's perfectly accurate. All narcissists don't have cold empathy, not the full-fledged emotional component. My answer would be different. And I've spent 30 years studying this topic, and I myself am a narcissist, which gives me, I think, a bit of an advantage, a bit of an edge. There are other self-aware narcissists online. I was the first in 1995. So,
Yes.
but now there's a new generation of self-aware narcissists online, but they don't
Yeah.
have the academic background. They don't have the knowledge and the
Hmm.
training. So
Hmm.
they're missing that part. I think I'm the only one who is self-aware and also teaches psychology and so on.
Yeah, I also think the same. Yeah.
I'm not,
Knowing the
maybe there
other.
is another person, but I'm not aware of someone else who is
Yeah.
like that. And this gives me a bit of an advantage. So I would say that, and of course, I've worked with well over 2,200 narcissists in the last 30 years. I have a huge database and so on. So I think what is common to all narcissists is the inability to perceive other people as external and separate. They don't have the conception of externality and separateness. And this is because narcissists are incapable of interacting with external objects. What they do, they convert everyone immediately. First second, they convert into an internal object. and then they continue to interact with the internal object. And why is that? Because narcissists were never allowed to separate and individuate from the mother. They have no experience of being separate from another human being. They've always been enmeshed, melded, merged, fused. It used to be called, we used to call this in clinical literature, the symbiotic phase, symbiosis. So the narcissist and the mother remain a unit to the day the narcissist dies. And because the narcissist never had the experience, has never had the experience of separating and becoming an individual, he cannot understand the separateness and individuality and externality
Autonomy.
of another person. And I
Mhm.
think this is what is called. Because of that, the narcissist doesn't have empathy. Empathy is a secondary effect, not a cause. The cause is if I cannot see you as external and separate to me, how can I ever empathize with you? Empathy
Exactly.
is excluded, you know?
How can I understand your autonomy? You are an autonomous person
Yeah.
and different. Yeah.
How can I accept that you have emotions and your own emotions
Yeah.
and cognitions and, and,
And
and
your
wishes,
emotions are not my
dreams?
emotions. Yeah.
If you do have emotions, they're mine
Mm,
because you are an internal object in my mind. Everything that's
mm,
happening to you, your cognitions, your emotions, your wishes, your dreams, your fun, everything, they're mine.
mm,
Uh, I realize that you are an internal object inside my mind and there are other objects. I do realize that you are separate from other internal objects in my mind. So you are like a character in a video game, you know? How
mhm.
can I empathize? Does anyone empathize with a character in a video game when they shoot them and kill them? And no one does it.
Yeah.
No one empathizes with it. No one says,
No
"Oh
one
my
does.
God, the poor character! I just shot him. It's horrible." No one does it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I understand. I understand that. Very interesting. Very interesting topic. Um well, I'm do you think there is a sort of political correctness against talking about narcissistic abuse?